Alright, okay, good evening. Okay, welcome to today's session. Okay, so as usual, I'll be going through the markets over here, okay, and highlight the opportunities and, of course, talk about which are some of the key pairs to be identified into the watch list for opportunities for this week, okay. Let's start off with the dollar index. Okay, I'm gonna zoom out a little bit to give you a bigger picture perspective on the dollar index first. Right now we are looking at this primarily as a 5-wave structure, okay, with this here as wave 3. Okay, meaning we're looking at this top as the initial reversal point, and we have this as a 1, 2, potentially 3, wave 4 development, and then we can expect more downside, right? This is the current primary view, and again, if you just have discount all the wave counts itself, you would ideally still remain bearish because of the recent momentum from here, right? Okay, so even without the wave count itself, we are generally gonna still be bearish bias. It's just a little bit on the Fed expectation. As of now here, the minimum expectation, if I take away the 50% mark, would put us somewhere between the 104.90 zone as a wave 4 kind of pullback completion area, right? So it's taking a little bit of a while. It might even be the case where we may not even see the pullback coming back as deep as 104.90. We might even just see this simply going as a flat kind of consolidation and then one more dip with momentum and then breaking that low, right? So that is also very, very possible. But of course, if today we're going to be looking for areas to kind of short the dollar, we would want to see some sort of a deeper pullback, right? And that would present as a key area, okay? In other words, maybe in a shorter term perspective, we can even consider dollar strength, okay? But of course, this one here, we'll need to see if we can get that set up to trade the short-term pullback or short-term kind of reversal direction. Okay, euro dollar, very much is just gonna be the inverse of it, right? So this is potentially building into a possible short-term sell trade idea, okay? Because we do have price, number one, from a bigger picture perspective, giving us a diagonal. Number two, we have price actually taking out that high within the diagonal itself, and potentially open up the part where this can be a fake break. Okay, so we're not expecting a major reversal, but minimally here we are expecting the pullback towards like 23.6 Fib, which is where that previous low is, right, before the diagonal started. So that's a very conservative kind of expectation for the pullback, okay? So that would open up a possibility where we can look to see if short selling this pullback would be worthwhile. Okay, so very, very quickly, if I just go over to euro dollar, okay, on the lower time frame hourly. To be honest, the more conservative confirmation of this would be to break that low, right? To kind of give us that confirmation that this is indeed a fake break, right? Because then that would be the neckline. But if that's gonna be the case, we will need more time for the entire setup to establish itself, okay? Which will probably not be within the week itself already, right? Because you need to have like a couple of different component and criteria set up before we can look for the trade. So within this week, if you're more conservative, probably nothing much on the euro. If you're a little bit more aggressive and kind of scouting out for potential trade ideas, then you can wait for an impulsive break of this minor low, and the pullback here might open up that initial sell trade kind of opportunity, right? So you're kind of like looking at the expectation where price would really come back down and take out that low. So for me, we'll keep an eye on it as we progress throughout the week. But as of today, that's the general view on the euro. And of course, overall direction, we're still expecting upside, right? Because again, if you put this into a 5-wave perspective, this will be low, then 1, 2, 3, and of course 4 pullback, and then one more push back up, right? Yeah, so that's on the euro dollar. And then the pound dollar is pretty similar in a way. This crawl, this diagonal, would be more or less completed, right? Because we have kind of 5-wave internal. Okay, we have 5-wave inside it. Okay, generally a crawl would complete when we kind of see a 5-wave within it, right? So this would also opens up a short-term sell pullback opportunity. Okay, again, very conservatively towards 23.6 Fibonacci retracement. That would be around 1.2830, 2825, right? So again, going down to the lower time frame, the confirmation for this would ideally be around the swing low, right? Because then that would establish as this is a potential kind of fake break. Okay, and then this would serve as the neckline, right? So the kind of conservative setup will be for price to eventually take out that low, pull back, and then short-term sell. Okay, if you're a bit more aggressive, okay, you might even consider like 15-minute time frame, which I don't really do it. Okay, I think if you look at 15-minute, you probably need to be spending a little bit more time monitoring the developments of price. But if you're looking at this on a really short term, right, we have this as a break. Okay, the market is attempting to kind of break that low. Okay, you can see that here, right? So if that's going to be like a little bit more to the downside, maybe for the next like 1 hour, if you can really give us a clean break on this, then that pullback would also serve an opportunity to sell. Okay, on a 15-minute chart, which definitely your stop loss is going to be a little bit tighter. That can be also the way to look at it. Okay, yeah, so it really depends on the time frame on the chart, and of course, do you have the capacity to be monitoring the price development? So yeah, I'll be keeping a close watch on this too, the euro as well as the pound. Okay, we'll see how things gonna develop moving forward within the week itself. If there's an opportunity, then obviously we just kind of keep you guys updated anyway. Okay, so that's what I have on this two pair, and then going into Aussie. Aussie, initially I was looking at the possibility where this can develop into a 3-wave that looks something like that, and then that opens up the buy opportunity around there. But with the recent break here, it seems like price is carrying momentum to the upside. So we will now stick to the fact that this low has been established. Okay, and we are looking at a 3-wave to the upside, right? So we have the inner 3-wave projection, which would put us slightly lower here at 6435. And then we have the bigger 3-wave projection, which is this one here, which will put us around 6500, right? Kind of psychological number as well. So of course, depending on how you're going to set up your trade, you may or may not need to go and target the secondary, areas, right? I mean, if this makes sense with certain risk of reward ratio, then just go for this. It's easier to hit, obviously, than going for further targets. Right. So this one here, I would say if we can get a corrective pullback, we may get something. So if I kind of again drop down to the lower time frame to kind of show you a little bit what I'm tracking. The H1, to be honest, we don't really see a very obvious momentum move, right? You can see in the hourly it's kind of like building up slowly and then inching higher. The H4 does have some momentum candle. You can see this is huge. Okay. So as of now, I'm not very convinced on really taking this as a trade setup, right? It's more something I would just want to keep an eye on. I mean, if price really just continue to do correctively pull back, I don't mind kind of like putting in a potential trade here with a stop loss here, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's just about probability, but it's not something I'm very confident in at this moment until I see more corrective pullback, okay? Because we are kind of lacking that impulsive leg, right? H4, we do have it. We have that momentum candle here. But ideally, we want to see something like this somewhere at the bottom, so that when it pulls back, it comes into some level of confluence, right? So right now we don't have it, so that's that little part that I'm just a little bit cautious in the setup, okay, in the setup component. But I think overall direction, there's a very good chance this will just complete the three-wave development anyway, okay. Yeah, so that's on Aussie. Currently not really like tagging yet, but as price continue to develop, maybe tomorrow, the next day, we may get something, right? Then we have dollar Canadian. Dollar Canadian here, direction right now is bearish bias. Okay, and basically it's a very simple projection, right? 1, 2, 3, and then we are just waiting for the pullback. Okay, what we have this here on the 4 hour, very obvious, is also this little break. Okay, and this break carries momentum, which is great, which means that as long as price remains below the swing low, sorry, not swing low, swing high, as long as price remains below the swing high, any sort of a corrective pullback can just be seen as an opportunity to sell it, okay, with a target towards 4215. Okay, so this one here on the lower time frame, right? Ideally, we're looking at the move back, somewhere towards the fib area. Okay, so kind of slight adjustment over there. It's still quite a distance away. I mean, on the lower time frame, it's about 100 bips. Again, I don't really expect price to just come back up within a single day, right? Because then that would be pretty impulsive in nature. Speaking of that, today is Tuesday, so maybe by tomorrow evening or even Thursday, if price were to continue to just pull back sort of correctively, then that would give us a higher odds of selling it to the downside. Okay, yeah, so we get a very clean, at least on a lower time frame, right? Very clean, kind of low, high, and then lower low, right? So the pullback itself will obviously be seen as a sell trade, right? In confluence with the higher time frame. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at right now. Okay, yeah, so that's on dollar CAD, potential setup within that. Then we have dollar yen. Dollar yen very nicely bounced off. Okay, do I see the possibility where it can really break out of this bearish channel? To be honest, yes. Okay, because if I zoom out further and give you a really bigger picture perspective, right? There is the possibility where this is a ABC structure. Okay. Not the cleanest of all, to be honest, because this internal seems to be a 5-wave as well, which would then open up the possibility of this not being a ABC, but this would then be a 1, 2, 3, 4, and then of course 5, right? But then again, this builds in as a 5-wave, so that need maybe a little bit of adjustment. So there are a bit of not the clearest things of all, but we don't need those things to be like super clear, right? Because at the end of the day, it's really the perspective of how we view the market and put in account, right? But either case, right, what I want to share with you is that even if we see this as a single wave here, and then this is a ABC as expanding flat, okay, the projection would then be this can actually go higher and take out that high, right? Okay, so that would be the view if we take the first perspective. The second perspective, which is what I've just updated, right? If this is going to be a 5-wave up, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then this would serve as a second wave, right? Or this can be an A, and then this can be a B. And if that's going to be the case, we're still also looking for upside, right? So in a way, kind of put us in the view where it doesn't matter what your real count is, the pattern structure itself suggests more upside eventually. And we do have a very nice little kind of bearish corrective move, right? It's not like coming down super impulsive as well. Right, so all these things starts to add together where there is a good possibility we may see the dollar yen push beyond that channel. Okay, so if that's gonna be the case, then that would open up really bigger upside, right? Because you can see once it breaks, the next potential significant area might be somewhere around 154. Okay, but then again, you don't want to be buying at the top. Okay, you want to be waiting for that sort of a pullback, you know, before kind of looking for a buy, right? And of course, dollar yen had a pretty decent trade that got hit the target just yesterday, right? Recently. Very nice little setup over here. Kind of talk a little bit about it last week as well, where we mentioned about the crawl structure. Okay, we get that clean break of structure and then it pull back into key areas. So a simple 1:2. Okay, and right now, obviously you don't want to be kind of buying at the top. Okay, but what we have over here is that if the market decides to pull back, okay, we want to start to see some sort of a setup established, maybe around this key area, right? So from wave perspective, this can be a 3-wave development, and after a 3-wave development, then we'll kind of expect a 50% pullback. Okay, 50 to 618, right, around that zone. So somewhere there. Okay, so yeah, I think dollar yen after that trade, probably you just need to be a bit patient before having a second opportunity to kind of buy into the dollar yen. Okay, so this one probably need to wait out a little bit. Okay, gold. Gold is really testing all-time high. It's kind of pushing all-time high. 5th wave structure, right? It came to 127 and then kind of give us a little bit of rejection here. But if kind of do a bit of projection, right? Let me see if this kind of extended already. Yeah, not really. Still there, right? Okay. So this is, to me, I think quite clear. This is definitely very strong in momentum. So that led me to just very quickly say, oh, that would be potentially wave 3. This would then be wave 4, and then wave 5 is in development. Okay. So there are some projection on where wave 5 can terminate or where wave 5 can complete, right? The one way you can see what I've done is I've take wave 1, duplicate, the price magnitude, which is getting pretty close, right? The other way that you saw the FIB just now is basically taking wave 3 to wave 4, and then we do a simple extension. Okay. Then the third method of which we can project wave 5 is to take from 0, okay, to wave 3 and then map it to wave 4, and we can project the 618, right, which is a little bit further up. Okay, so there are a couple of ways from wave theory, we can use fibs, ratios to project where wave 5 can terminate. But the thing is, you don't want to be trading in the top anyway, right? You don't want to be trading at, almost at where wave 5 will complete. You either wait for a pullback and then, continue to buy, or you start to look out for potential reversal, which we don't have any at the moment, right? And that's the part where I'm just going to maintain neutral. Okay. So I don't think gold would present much of a trading opportunity within the week. Probably I'm just going to stay at the sideline. Okay. Silver, probably more or less going to be the same. Okay. The only slight difference here is we have yet to take out a all-time high, right? I mean, silver has this top that hasn't been broken. Okay, so there's a slight difference between this and gold. Okay, gold is testing all-time high, is pushing all-time high. Silver is not. There is that subtle difference here as well, where price can test this top and eventually make a move back down, test this bottom, and then only start making a move back up and break a high. At this moment, we won't know. Okay, we don't have that piece of information in terms of like how price is going to react here. But by the time price tests this high, we will start to get a bit more clue depending on how price is going to develop around that zone. Right? I mean, if it gets a clean break, then that's pretty clear. But if price starts to struggle, okay, forming some sort of a potential reversal pattern, then it's kind of indicating, alright, the early sign of a push back down, coming back to where this area is, might be the trade direction we want to focus on. Okay, so again, what do we do now? We stay neutral because we don't have that piece of information at the moment. Okay, so gold and silver for me right now, probably you don't want to force anything. Right, you probably just want to leave it as it is. Okay, so nothing much of that. Then we have crude oil. Okay, which for the past 1 to 2 weeks, right, I would say almost 2 weeks, it has been ranging around here. Okay, didn't really break a key low, but didn't really break the minor high. Okay, if I kind of put in this channel, not really channel, a trend line here, very very simple, just connecting the tops. Okay, we haven't really cleared that as well. Okay, we are attempting to break this high, but still too early because it's just currently doing that. If what we can see here is a clean impulsive break, okay, which is breaking this and breaking that trend line, will turn bullish. Okay, but of course we are not buying at the top immediately, right? We still need to see some sort of a corrective pullback, then we start to look for buying. But this leg here, if we can get it, that would put us in a bullish bias. Until then, I'll just stay neutral. Why? Because this can easily just be something like this, and then the price just come back down. Okay, and it can continue to really just consolidate here, right? So for me, I don't see any clarity on crude oil based on this current moment. Alright, so that's the reason why we stay neutral, we stay patient, and see if price can actually break this. Sorry, it's not 6560, right? It's more like 6840. Okay. Right, so that's on crude oil, right? Nothing much. S&P, we did have a few clue here that says that we are turning bullish. Okay, and this is something I'm also monitoring for this week. I think it's worth looking into. The first thing here we have is this looks a little bit of a crawlish nature. Of course, the clarity here is we get this break, but the market U-turn quite quickly. The market attempt to take out this high not very cleanly. Of course, it's still early because this can just push back higher, and then that's a clean break, right? By end of today, we'll probably have a clue. Okay, but right now what we're seeing here is this is an early sign that price may have formed a temporary bottom, and we can see some sort of pullback. Are we gonna see a resumption to the top and break new high on S&P? I mean, it's a little bit too early to kind of do that kind of projection. But since we are looking at monitoring the market on a regular basis, you don't need to immediately project the price to break all-time high, right? Because if today you get it set up here, you look at this, all right, if it goes here, that's pretty great. You take that trade anyway, right? And then you wait for the pullback, and then if this keeps going, you just take another trade and move on, right? Yeah, so that's the thing, right? You don't need to project too far into the future, okay? But I think what's important is just make an assessment in terms of at least in the near term, in terms of your trading horizon, is there sufficient room for you to make the move, right? So that's what I'm seeing here on S&P, right? I mean, discounting the other factors like fundamentals, like policies and things like that might move the markets, based purely on the technical perspective, there's a good opportunity we'll see some sort of a push to the upside, right? So on the lower time frame, this is something I'm looking at, right? Again, I don't expect this to trigger today. Okay, I don't want this to come down too fast. But it's definitely a valid setup that's building. It's very clean. We have that liquidity sweat. We have that breakout structure on the lower time frame. We have that inner liquidity level here as well. Okay, everything is building up quite valid. We don't have a fair value gap here that is obvious, but you can see on the 4-hour we have it, right? We have this momentum candle. That is that gap, okay, which is gonna put you around like 5590, and if you go back to the lower time frame, that's around there as well, right? 5580, 5590, somewhere there. Okay, so that's the S&P, right? That's the S&P. Generally the US equities. Okay. Then we have GBP AUD, which unfortunately for me, I don't have a valid setup to take a trade, but I have a clear direction all the way until price hits the target as of today. Okay. It's not the cleanest movement. Okay, there are a couple of you can see deep pullback, push up, deeper pullback, and then things like that. But the structure all this while has been pretty clean, right? We're kind of expecting a simple ABC WXY true wave. Okay, so but again, if you have your own techniques and strategies in getting involved in the trade, by all means, okay. So right now I'm gonna be neutral because price has entered the area. Okay, not only on a fit, but you can see if you just do a simple projection of a channel, it's there. So the idea here again is be a little bit neutral, be a little bit patient, and see how price is going to react off this. Okay, two potential possibility, right? If this just comes down impulsively, we may open up the possible of a short-term sell here to take opportunity of this tree wave. Okay, if price just decides to do something of sort of this, okay, so a little bit of a double topping formation, then that would be great as well, because this can indicate that there's a higher chance this will come back down, right? Because then that would build into a double top, right? So again, give it a couple of days, right? We'll gain some clarity maybe towards Thursday or Friday. Kevin can do a proper planning on that. Okay. Yeah, so if I zoom out further on the pound yen, right, this would be the current view. You can see bigger picture perspective, this is considered more of like a correction, which opens up the odds that this can actually come back down before the move up. okay, because this is the entire piece of the structure here. And yeah, okay, and this can be also seen as a, depending on how you want to see this can be a triple zigzag, WXY XZ. Okay. But again, we don't need to do too much of a kind of like count and label. I always kind of emphasize a bit more towards the price and pattern structure, right? So that's what we're looking at for now. Patient and neutral, okay. Odd yen is a little bit different from the pound yen, right? Odd yen here has slightly different structure overall. This one here, I think, a little bit more similar to the dollar yen, right? Which right now may open up the possibility where we can see more upside, right? Again, zoom out. Okay, you can clearly see again if I just put this very clear tree wave, right? Okay, we don't have that break of the channel yet, but we're kind of projecting it will. Okay, and if that breaks, it opens up all the way to this top, right? So, zooming back in, today we continue to see that momentum to the upside, which is great because then that will confirm the momentum move. Okay, and if today we start to see a little bit, I mean, it's still very early time, we're still trading close to the top, right? But if price starts to pull back here, okay, I need to clean this up a little bit. This is not the easiest to be viewed because it's huge, right? But this would be the view we're gonna take into account, right? Liquidity sweep double bottom. This would then be the neckline. It broke that. Right? Technically, this would be your swing low. Okay. But again, if that's gonna be our potential swing low reference, the pullback needs to come quite towards the bottom, right? I mean, now it's trading around like 95. It needs to make a 200 pips pullback. So I don't think it's something is gonna happen. I would say it's not something of a setup that might develop and complete within the week. Okay, because again, we don't want this to come down too fast and impulsively, right? But what is the next opportunity that might present itself is that this can do something like that. Okay, which gives us a short-term counter trend sell. Okay, so we have a short-term sell trade that potentially we can take here. Okay, and of course, if you're ambitious, you can target like all the way here, but of course, oftentimes we don't do that. We just aim a very, very conservative take profit. Yeah, so I would say this counter trend short-term sell trade, trading the retracement seems a little bit more viable, okay, in the near term, as compared to like waiting to buy here. Okay, so we'll see, right? Again, it's still an early stage of how price is moving and developing, so we don't need to jump into conclusions so fast, right? So this is something I'm looking at. Then we have the pound odd. Okay, again, pound odd is like one of the unfortunate trade where I decide to get out at break even because things didn't look very nice, and then it was a trade that eventually priced when I hit targets. Right. Yeah, so let me walk through a little bit, right? The idea was we're looking at a 5 wave back at this stage. That was a smaller setup here on the lower time frame for us to consider a sell, right? So we're looking at already a 5 wave and potentially pullback. Okay, we got involved in the trade, but then price came very close to the stop loss, and then it didn't really feel good because this was pretty strong, you can see. And then I got an opportunity to just get out at break even, and then price just decides to go and hit target, right? Okay, yeah, so things like that happens, right? But for now, this one here, what we're looking at is another opportunity to see if we can get a sell. Okay, because this move is definitely strong. It clear off these two lows, therefore putting us the view where this is wave 5 completed, and we can potentially get a true wave pullback. Okay, and we're looking at opportunities over here. Okay, so again, if I go down to the lower time frame on the pound odd, it's the same thing, right? I don't expect this to come back by today. It will likely need to take some time because we want this to come back correctively. But that's the setup, right? I mean, you can see that. If we get something like that, okay, if we get something like that, we can consider the pullback trade. Okay, but we'll see as it develops, right? Whether is it high conviction trade or is it just a valid, as it develops, we'll need to see and make that adjustment. Okay. I mean, couple of things here, right? Things like this here, again, there's that short term, whether is it worth it, we need to make that assessment. Kind of mentioned just now the pair on odd yen as well, right? Okay, so some of this, as I share with you the overarching direction, internally there is also some opportunities that we can trade the pullback. Okay, but of course, then the assessment is whether worth it or not, right? Do we have that confidence in that short-term retracement trade? Okay. Yeah, so that's on pound odd, right? So that's something we're looking at. Just a slight details over here. Okay. This high didn't really break that, right? I mean, that's the part where if it broke that, then the trade would have hit stop loss, but he didn't really tag it, and then it just comes down, right? So I just also want to highlight on that. From this new setup perspective, ideally it would have tagged it, right? But it did not. I mean, I'm not too particular that, but just telling you there's that slight gap over there, okay, that it didn't really touch. Okay, so that's on pound odd. Then we have Bitcoin. I'm gonna maintain a little bit on neutral point of view because this pullback isn't very correct. Isn't very impulsive. Okay, so we get a couple of V shapes after one another, and then right now we're doing a correction. So what I'm seeing here is that is a higher odds that perhaps this would turn into something like that. Okay, maybe this correction here will give us one push down, then only the eventual move. Yeah, so neutral. Okay, because I think it's just not clear, but with this correction, it hints that there's one more time that we may see that push down and potentially breaking that low here. Okay, which means price might go lower than $76,700 before maybe making a major U-turn back up. Okay, so BTC here, I'm just gonna stay neutral for now. Okay, good. So a couple of you were asking some of the things. I think we kind of mentioned a little bit already, like Owing, we talked about it. Okay, pound odd, we also talk about it. Euro New Zealand. Very similar to pound odd. Okay, this is pretty impulsive. Okay, kind of make a high and then kind of reverse V shape, right? Okay, so I think we don't have real reference point here. You can see that. So what we can only look into is really this is an impulsive leg, okay, kind of V shape. So correction here, we can expect one more, right? So this one here, we just use a simple projection of a three wave. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Oh, good. Okay, so generally that would be the things to look up for. Okay, yeah, I can mention a couple of things here, and of course some, really depending on how price is going to develop moving forward, we may get some near term of like counter trend trading the pullback kind of setups, right? Good. Any questions from here? Okay, how to know which pattern will continue and which pattern is reversal? Um, Basically, the pattern nature, or say the price pattern here we're looking at is if it's an impulse, we call this a crawl, but the official name is more like a diagonal or wedge, then it's a reversal pattern. Okay. So for example, what you see over here in this chart, you have this, which is a diagonal, right? It reverse. You have this here, which is a diagonal. It reverse. You have this here, which is an impulse correction. It continues. Okay. Sometimes you don't get very clean chart pattern like this kind of movement. We call it a V shape. Okay. So we keep things simple. Just based on the pattern itself, we can have a overall expectation of the direction. But we also add in additional layers, in terms of like certain edit wave principles. Okay, but the core of things is basically your pattern itself. Okay, so very simple pattern projection. All right, so giving you like again some example, right? This was a crawl. We have the early sign of a reversal, right? If this comes down correctively, then that would expect more upside, right? So that's the impulse correction continuation, right? Cool. Good. Okay. Some of this here might build into something quite meaningful. As of tomorrow, I mean, price is always moving, right? So as of tomorrow morning, it come back onto the charts. Um, we'll see. Okay, I mean this pattern is definitely very small, right? It's not really an hourly setup. It's more like a 15-minute setup. Um, we'll see, right? Okay, so yeah, I hope that's clear for today's session. Okay, so if there's nothing else, that's all from me for this session over here. Hopefully, can give you guys some insights. Okay, all the best for this week, and as usual, we'll see you guys in the next session. Yeah. Okay, so see you guys. Bye bye.